Good morning, fight fans, and welcome to the Friday, July 12th edition, of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, going to be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Quite a bit to talk about today, guys. Previewing a card, recapping a card, and some fight announcements. So let's get right into it. But before I do, just want to plug myself here. You guys can follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe, spread the word, guys. I'd appreciate that. Also, check me out at sherdog.com, bjpenn.com, MMA News, and MMARings.net. Like I said, quite a bit to talk about. I'm going to start with the PFL card from last night, and I'm going to get into Bellator after that. So, yes, PFL 2019 Week 4 took place last night. Really good card. Definitely want to talk about this one. We know some of the playoff matchups now, so that's kind of good to know going forward. But yes, I want to give my thoughts on some of the fights. Just pulling up the card right now. Like I said, really good card from what I saw. It was on TSN in Canada here, so I was able to actually watch the card. I'll start from the top and work my way down. Main event of the evening. No surprise here, really. Magomed Karamov wins a unanimous decision over Chris Curtis. I don't think this surprises anyone. Magomed Karamov won the last season of the tournament. The guy's an absolute stud. He's a fantastic fighter, really underrated fighter. You know, you talk about the best welterweights in the world. He's never brought up, but he really should be. He is a fantastic fighter. He's actually on a 10-fight win streak now, and includes numerous quality wins here. Chris Curtis, John Howard. We'll talk about Ray Cooper 3, Bojan Velikovic twice. So he's beat a number of guys who used to be in the UFC, which is good, and he's only 29 years old. So he's an absolute stud. He's a millionaire from the last season. The guy's really good. Beats Chris Curtis here. Chris Curtis put up a good fight, but ultimately lost. I believe these guys are actually going to rematch in the playoffs, so that's kind of interesting. But I have to say that Magomed Karamov will probably win that fight. Although I will give Chris Curtis some credit. He was really pushing hard in that third round. Ended up losing a unanimous decision, but he was trying to win the fight the whole time. So we got to give the guy credit. And again, he's a guy that I think the UFC made a mistake passing on after the Contender Series, where he won the fight by knockout, and then they just passed on him for whatever reason. It doesn't make sense to me, but I do think he's a pretty good fighter. Although Magomed Karamov is really good. Co-main event was a blowout fight. No surprise here. Kayla Harrison wins by first round submission over Morgan Fryer. Took her down really early. Was working on some ground and pound, and then eventually, actually, some really nasty ground and pound. Like, her ground and pound's improved for sure. And then she gets the submission with Americana. Great win from Kayla Harrison here. Again, 5-0 now in MMA. She's a stud. She's just a special talent. I mean, she really is a special talent. And when I watch her fight, I'm like, wow, this is one of the most dominant female fighters I've ever seen. Again, it's, she's a lightweight, so it's kind of a shame she's not in the UFC, but they don't have her weight class. So who knows? Maybe one day she can make 145, fight Cyborg in the UFC or Amanda Nunes. But let's throw her role here. She's only 5-0, and she's been beating, let's be honest here, lackluster competition. She goes to the playoffs as the number 2 seed. Sarah Kaufman's actually the number 1 seed in the playoffs, so that's kind of interesting. But she's still a great fighter, and I expect her to win that tournament. Although the Sarah Kaufman should give her a good fight. Sarah Kaufman's a very experienced fighter. She got a walkover win last night, enters as the number 1 seed, but Kayla Harrison's still a massive favorite to win this whole tournament. Next up, welterweight fight. Yoel Seferino defeats Bojan Velikovic by unanimous decision. Bojan, you know what? If you look at the strike stats after the fight, he landed a lot of strikes in this fight, but Yoel basically controlled him and got takedowns when he needed to and won a decision here. So I don't know if he'll make the playoffs. Right now, he's on the outside looking in, but who knows? There could be an injury, and he'd be probably the next guy in line. As for Bojan, yeah, he didn't make the playoffs, and this guy has just been a massive disappointment in PFL. I don't know what's next for him. I mean, I don't think he's a bad fighter by any means. He's had some tough matchups in PFL, to be fair to this guy, but just hasn't got the job done. And you have to wonder, does he think, hey, maybe this isn't for me anymore? Because he's been in the UFC, didn't go too well, been in PFL, hasn't gone too well. Not a bad fighter. I mean, if they have another season, I'm sure he'd be invited back, but the results just haven't been there for the guy, And again, I think he's a quality fighter, but had tough matchups, just hasn't got the job done. And at some point, you have to get that big win that just kind of shows that you're someone that belongs. And he really hasn't did that in PFL. So disappointing performance here by Velikovic, and UFC vet Zaffarino gets the win. Next up, the upset of the night, in my opinion, wow. I mean, this is insane. I can't believe this happened, actually. John Howard knocks out Ray Cooper the third in the first round with punches. Just an incredible knockout by John Howard. If you have not seen the replay, I think it's on their Twitter page, so go check that out. I watched it live. I just tuned in right when John Howard knocked out Ray Cooper. I was like, holy smokes, no way. Like, couldn't believe this one. John Howard was, I believe, a plus 475 underdog, so a massive underdog in this fight. Gets the knockout win over Ray Cooper 3. It's going to pull the odds out, actually, just to make sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what he was. Yes, just an absolutely tremendous knockout here by John Howard. And, it's crazy, right? Like, I thought Tim Means left this guy for dead in 2015, but he's put together a decent run here in PFL. And, yes, it was plus 470, actually, so a huge underdog, and Cooper was a minus 725 favorite in loss. So, bad loss by Cooper here. But, yes, John Howard, man, what a knockout. And who knows? They might be in the playoffs at some point. I believe John Howard's going to fight David Michaud, who I'll talk about in a second here. But, Drake Hooper's 3, I think, is still a quality fighter. You get some brawls, and this is what happens when you get in brawls, when you're trading with punches with a guy like John Howard, who does have knockout power. But, again, John Howard, I got to give this guy all the credit in the world. And to me, he was the fighter of the night. He moves to 28-15-1 in his career. And if you look at his PFL record, he's actually 3-2-1 no contest now. So he has a winning record in PFL. And since he was cut from the UFC, he's actually 5-3-1. So he's got a nice record since being cut by the UFC in 2015, where again, I thought he was left for dead by Tim Means. Tim Means destroyed him, left him unconscious in the middle of the octagon, and I thought this guy is done. I think he said he was going to retire, didn't end up retiring, came back, and he's looked great ever since. So John Howard, or not great, but he's looked good at times for sure, including last night. Just that's a massive win over Ray Cooper. And, John Howard's got to be one of the favorites now to win the tournament just based on that win alone. It's just a tremendous knockout by John Howard. Although, if they did rematch, I don't know. I'd still have to think about picking Cooper, even with the result in this fight, just because, the age advantage and just how good he looked last year. But John Howard is the man of the hour, and he was the first star of the night, in my opinion. Next up, we had another welterweight bout. Gleyko Franca defeats Sadibou C by third round ground and pound. It was a close fight. For a lot of people thought that C was probably winning the fight, and then he just gassed out basically and got taken down. And Franca moved into the mount and beat him up. Gets the win. Franca's a really good fighter. This guy is another guy that was cut by the UFC, and now he's on an 8-fight win streak since being released by the UFC back in 2016. Kind of didn't really get a fair shake in the UFC. Loses to Gregor Gillespie and James Vick and gets cut. Kind of unfair, but he's looked great ever since. Another good signing by PFL here, and this guy's a stud. And I don't think he's a bad fighter by any means, but he's got a lot of holes in his game, of course. Next up, like I said, another big upset here. David Michaud beats Henderson Ferreira first round TKO. Man, David Michaud, another big underdog, plus 450. And I said yesterday in the show, I'm like, man, the odds seem a little high here. And look what happens. This is why you don't lay minus 675 on guys like Henderson Ferreira. Just it's not worth it. And this is the kind of thing that can happen. Great win here by David Michaud. He moves to 1-1, excuse me, in PFL. Lost to C in the first round by body kick, and now wins against Ferreira. Moves into the playoffs with this win. Great win for David Michaud, man. Guys, another scrappy fighter that the UFC cut, and he's looked pretty good since being released by the UFC a couple years ago. In 2015, he got cut. He's looked pretty good ever since then. So good for this guy. He actually has some finishing power. People don't look at him and think, hey, this guy's a knockout artist. He's been finishing guys, so good for him. This was a great performance. Next up, here's an upset I actually did call correctly. Larissa Pacheco beats Bobby Joe Dalzio by first round submission. The odds here were wrong for sure. Pacheco has so much experience, even though she hasn't won much lately. Again, look who she'd fought. She had fought some of the best fighters in the world in the women's weight classes, like Kayla Harrison, Macy Chiasson, Jermaine Durandamy, and Jessica Andrade. So she's a good fighter. I always liked Larissa Pacheco. I always thought she was pretty good. Gets a first round submission over Joe Dalzio, excuse me. And I'm not surprised by this at all. And anyone who bet on her made some decent money. She closed at minus 110, but she was available plus money like the whole week. So Pacheco definitely was, in my opinion, probably one of the best value bets of the week, just because she should have been a favorite in this fight and she was an underdog. So good win for her, and she moves into the playoffs. And I'm going to be curious to see how she does in the playoffs. I think she's fighting Sarah Kaufman in the first round, so that should be interesting. And then another women's fight, we had Jenna Fabian knocking out Moriel Chernesky in the first round with punches. Great win here for Fabian. And she's, got some good striking knockout power, and her striking's pretty good. But she's fighting Kayla Harrison in October, so I mean, better clean up that takedown defense. And I don't think 3 months is enough time to work on the wrestling skills needed to stop Kayla Harrison's takedowns. So even though this was a good win by her, yeah, I think she's going to be in trouble in that fight. So overall, a good card. And again, there was a couple fights that were canceled: the Zane Kamaka and Andre Filo fight, and Sarah Coffin and Roberto Samad. So that's disappointing when fighters don't make their weight classes. But it happens. It's MMA. And overall, pretty good card. All right, so let's get into Bellator 224. That takes place tonight. It's at Vacaville. Bellator's like home away from home, basically. Pretty good card here. Let's talk about it. First, I'll pull the odds out, actually. Main event of the evening, Julia Blood's taking on Olga Rubin. And I'll just talk about the current odds. If you want to look at the opening odds, you can check out my breakdown odds breaker. Main event of the evening, Julia Budd currently minus 335, Olga Rubin plus 285. I like Julia Budd here a lot. I thought she would actually be a bigger favorite. To me, she could be like a minus 500 favorite. Maybe I'm not giving Rubin the respect she deserves, but I mean, I just have a lot of respect for Julia Budd. She's just a really good fighter. 12-2 record. She's on a 10-fight win streak. And again, her only 2 losses in her career to Amanda Nunes and Ronda Rousey in Strikeforce back in 2011, has not lost since then. So 8-year undefeated streak, has really good wins. Marloes Kunin, Charmaine Tweed. There's just some pretty good wins. Talita Nogueira. Like she's beaten everyone in her way, except for, again, Rousey and Nunes. And all of her fights in her career have taken place in either Strikeforce, Invicta, or Bellator. So she has a ton of experience. She is 36, but she keeps herself in tremendous shape. She's a physical specimen. Very strong for this division. I just have a lot of respect for Julia, but I think she's a great fighter. And then she takes on Olga Rubin here, 29 years old, fighting out of Israel, 6-0. She's kind of a homegrown Bellator product. She made her debut in 2016. She's fought 4 of her fights in Bellator, 2 other ones in other promotions. But she did beat Cindy Dandois, who basically had a cup of coffee in the UFC. But I don't know. Yeah, she had 1 fight in the UFC against Alexis Davis. But yeah, overall, I mean, who knows? Maybe she could surprise. I don't see it, though. I don't think she has what it takes to beat Julia Budd, and that would be basically a way to, I think, either get her down and mount her and finish her at ground and pound, knock her on the feet with a punch, or submit her. And I just don't see her having those skills. I think Julia Budd controls this fight, takes Rubin down, controls her from top position, and eventually gets the finish via ground and pound. So give me Julia Budd here. The odds on her finishing the fight are plus 172, which I actually think are decent odds because I do see her finishing this fight. So I would definitely take a look at that prop. And if not, I think Budd wins this fight. So minus 335, yeah, it's it's not low, but it's reasonable, I think, because again, I thought she could have been minus 500. Next up, co-main event of the evening is a middleweight bout between Rafael Carvalho and Chidi Njokuani, Anthony's brother. Currently, it's a pick'em. We have Carvalho minus 108, Njokuani at minus 107, and it actually opened, I believe, as a pick'em too. Yes, so it's basically been a pick'em the whole time, and it's a pretty tough fight to call, I think. Carvalho was the former champion in Bellator, and at times he looked great. I mean, he has 2 wins over Melvin Manhoff. He beat Joe Schilling, Brian Rogers, Alessio Sakara, Brandon Halsey. He had some good wins. The Brandon Halsey win was a big upset. I remember that at the time. And Halsey's a guy that's really fallen off. But back-to-back losses now for Carvalho against Lyoto, Machida, and Gegard Mousasi. To me, those are bad losses, really. Like, Mousasi's a monster. And Machida's still great, too. I mean, he's not the guy he once was, but he's still a good fighter. And Carvalho went to a split decision with him. A lot of people thought he won against Machida. So, to me, he's not completely done yet as a top middleweight in Bellator. Now he takes on Chidi Njokuani, Chidi Bang Bang, 18-6-1 record, 1-0 contest, I should say. Coming off a loss to John Salter, but he does have a couple wins in Bellator over Isaki Kato, Melvin Gillard, Andre Fio, Ricky Rainey, also previous wins from his earlier career over guys like Max Griffin, who's in the UFC now, and Gilbert Smith, a former UFC fighter. Ala Juban, actually, back in 2011. I remember that fight, too. So he does have some good wins in his career, but I don't know. Like, it's a close fight. Don't get me wrong. This one could go either way. I do think Carvalho's a little bit of a better mixed martial artist. I think he can outpoint Chidi to get the decision here, but it's kind of a tough fight to call, and I'm not 100% confident about this one. So my pick would be Carvalho by decision, and the odds on that are actually plus 425. So that's crazy to me because I think he's a good chance of actually grinding this one out. Just outpointing him. yeah, I'm very surprised by those odds, actually, to be honest with you, because it's a pick 'em, and then you get plus 425 for a decision. That's something to think about. I'm not 100% confident in this fight because Chidi's actually a decent fighter, so and he matches up well. Could go either way, but again, my pick would be Carvalho by decision. Next up would be a women's flyweight bout between Christina Williams and Juliana Velasquez. Velasquez currently minus 265 and Williams plus 235. So Juliana Velasquez, she's 8-0, she's 32 years old, undefeated, made her pro debut in 2014, has not lost since then. 3-0 in Bellator. She beat Rebecca Ruth by body kick and then also won against Na Liang by submission and Alejandra Lara by split decision. So she's looked pretty good overall in Bellator and in her MMA career, undefeated again. And then she takes on Christina Williams, the Warhorse, 3-1. She's still known for that knockout win over Heather Hardy back in 2017. And then since then, she beat Bruna Ellen and Emily Ducote and lost to Valerie Letourneau by decision. And that's not a bad loss, obviously. Another fight I think can go either way. So I think there is some value possibly on Williams, but I mean, am I confident enough to bet to actually put money on her? I don't know. I don't know about that. Like Velasquez is undefeated. She probably has the advantage on the ground if he gets there. But on the feet, I do think Williams could have a good advantage here. So, you know, plus 235 is decent odds for a fight that I believe is actually closer than that. But, you know, I'm not 100% confident on it that I would rush to the window to bet it. I would say it's a dog or pass situation, though, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens. I could be wrong with this one, but I would rather take Williams here. And we know how Bellator cards go. Usually the favorites will win, but there's usually one upset at some point. So I think this could be it. And then we have a welterweight bout here to finish off the main card. Ed Ruth against Kichi Kunamoto. Ed Ruth currently minus 725. Kichi Kunamoto plus 550. I mean, it is a mismatch, but the odds are pretty high. Ed Ruth, good fighter, 6-1. All of his fights in Bellator, almost all of his wins by TKO, and then the last loss to Neiman Gracie, 4th round submission. This fight's only 3 rounds, of course. And then Kunamoto, former UFC fighter, 38 years old now. He's a lot of experience, 27, 2 and 1 no contest. So a lot of experience. He actually did pretty well in the UFC, was released. He's a decent fighter, I think. He has a lot of submissions on his resume, a lot of experience. I don't know. Like I wouldn't rush to lay minus 750 or minus 725 on Ed Ruth here. I do think he wins the fight, though. I think he probably wins by stoppage. So maybe if that prop comes out, Ed Ruth by TKO, that would probably be the way to go. Even though, you know, Kunamoto's only been finished once by strike, so it's not like it's a lock. And then it was actually in his MMA debut by 5-second knockout. I've never seen that before. Let me see if I can find the video of that. Koryu. Yeah, you know, my pick's going to be Ed Ruth by TKO, but again, the odds are a little high. There's a video actually on YouTube. I want to pull that out here. I want to see this knockout. Apparently, it was 5 seconds. Or it's not on YouTube. It's on Youku. Let's see here. I want to pull that out and see if I can find this. But yeah, 5-second knockout. I've never seen that before, so that's pretty interesting. We just saw obviously Masvidal get that 5-second knockout in the UFC. Here's the video. I'm going to check that out here. This is crazy, man. I've never seen this before. This is probably one of the fastest knockouts in MMA history. I mean, we know the 4-second one that Yamamoto had, but geez, 5 seconds. That's crazy. Oh, that's weird. Anyways, I'll check that out later. But yeah, so overall, I think it's a decent card. And as far as prelims go, there are some notable fighters on the prelims. AJ Agazarm, you know, kind of love him or hate him kind of fighter. Didn't look good in his debut, but he's someone that's notable, of course. Jordan Young, formerly, I believe, on the Contender Series. Leslie Smith for Sinead O'Connor. That should actually be a pretty good fight. I'm a little surprised that Leslie Smith wasn't on the main card. That was kind of a big signing for them. What else? Bruna Ellen, she's got kind of a name. Amanda Bell against Arlene Blenko. So there's some notable fights in the prelims. But yeah, main card looks decent. That's tonight on I believe Paramount or whatever, and I think it's on the Zone too. I don't know if I'll be able to watch this one live, but I'll definitely check out the replay. So it should be an okay card. Okay, so the Bellator's preview done. Let's get into some fight announcements now. We'll start with Bellator. They announced a couple fights here. Bellator 228. has a really good rematch announced between two guys I just mentioned, actually, Gegard, Mousasi, and Lyoto, Machida. So they will be rematching at Bellator 228. Remember, they fought in the UFC previously, and Machida won a split decision. So this should be interesting. Actually, was it split or was it unanimous? I can't remember now. Unanimous, excuse me. It was unanimous. I did actually remember. I bet on Mousasi in that fight. He was an underdog, and he ended up losing a decision. And then afterwards, Mousasi went and complained about Machida greasing him, greasing himself, I should say, and then basically being really slick and hard to submit. Who knows if there's any truth to that, but we do know Lyoto was caught for banned substances after that. Since then, Machida's really kind of tailed off a little bit, and he's still a good fighter, but he's not the same guy. And Mousasi's really just taken the sport by storm for the most part. So Mousasi, coming off a majority decision loss to Rafael Navarro Jr., but before that had won 8 straight fights, including wins over guys like Rory McDonald, Chris Weidman, Thiago Santos. So he's still a top guy, in my opinion. Takes on Machida here. Machida, again, he's older now. He's 41, but he's still winning fights. He's on a 4-fight win streak. Beat Chiasson in his last fight, also beat Rafael Carvalho in Bellator, and then in the UFC before leaving for Bellator, he beat Eric Anders and Peter Belfort. So he's on a nice roll right now, but and he does have the win over Mousasi. We have to keep that in mind, but I like Mousasi in the rematch, just fighting at a higher level right now, and the younger guy. Mousasi's only somehow 33, even though he has like almost 60 fights, which is crazy. So Mousasi's been around forever. He wants their revenge. I'm glad they made this fight. Even though it's not for the belt, I still like the matchup. And I would assume the winner of this fight does fight Lovato Jr. for the belt, maybe sometime later this year or earlier next year. Also, Bellator announced for Bellator 226, Ryan Bader will defend his heavyweight title against Cheick, Kongo. So this is a pretty interesting fight here. Ryan Bader, the light heavyweight champion and the heavyweight champion in Bellator. I can't believe he's 36. He doesn't seem like he's 36, right? Like, I know he's been around for a while, but man, he keeps himself in good shape, and he's just looked so good. Really reinvented himself in Bellator. He's on a 6-fight win streak right now. He's on, actually a 7-fight win streak. 5 straight wins in Bellator. Knocked out Fedor in his last fight to win the heavyweight title in the heavyweight tournament. Also beat Matt Mitchell and Muhammad Lawal in that tournament. And also beat Phil Davis and Linton Vassell to win the light heavyweight crown. So he's a double champ in Bellator. He's looked amazing. 5 of his last 7 wins are by knockout. He is not just a wrestler anymore. He knocks people out now, so he's just a beast. And then he takes on Cheick Kongo here. 44 years old, but still fighting at a high level. Cheick Kongo was actually on an 8-fight win streak and has not lost since 2015. And overall, he's actually 12-2 in Bellator, if you can believe it. Only losses to Muhammad Lawal by split decision and Fidley Minikov by unanimous decision. And he later, in this last fight, actually got revenge for that fight by winning a big upset there over Minikov. So he's looked really good, man. Kongo's looked great, and he's a big guy. He's a heavyweight, a true heavyweight, I should say. And he's looked fantastic. And he actually matches up pretty good against Bader because he's got that really good wrestling, especially against the fence with the Greco-Roman. But how can you not take Bader here? I mean, the guy is just a stud, and he's got knockout power. And we've seen Kongo get knocked out many times in the past. Yes, it's been a while, but I think he gets knocked out here. So give me Ryan Bader here by KO, and I'm gonna wait to see what the odds are for that one. I don't think it's going to be like an easy fight, but I think eventually he does catch Kongo within the 5 rounds. So interesting title fight here, and I'm curious to see if Ryan Bader gives up that light heavyweight belt or if he wants to go back to it for his next fight. A couple other UFC fights, and then I'll get out of here. UFC Copenhagen has another fight announced. The only other fight, I believe, is Jack Hermanson versus Jared Cannonier. Now we have Macy Chiasson versus Lina Lansberg in a women's fight, women's bantamweight fight. I kind of wish Macy was still a featherweight. She, be one of the fighters that I think could give Nunez or Cyborg problems, but she's still pretty young in the sport. She's only, 27. She's only has 5 fights in MMA. Pro fights, should say. Also has the 2 fights in the Ultimate Fighter. She's looked really good in the UFC. 3 straight wins by stoppage over Patty Kianza, Gina Mazzani, and Sarah Morris. Just looked fantastic. I'm a big fan of Macy Chiasson. I think she can go far in the sport. Takes on Lina Lansberg, 37 years old, but pretty experienced here, and 3-3 in the UFC. Beat Tanya Evinger in a big upset in her last fight. She's looked pretty good overall, but she has been finished twice by Ladd and Cyborg. And I kind of see this fight playing out the same way. I think that Chiasson gets her down on the ground, gets on top, and beats her up for ground and pound. So give me Chiasson here. I think she should be a big favorite when the odds come up for this one, but we'll see what happens. And then, Lansberg, I got to give her credit, man. She was a big underdog in that fight against Evinger and came through with a good win. And one last fight to talk about here, and this is kind of interesting, actually. There's a flyweight bout announced for UFC Mexico City. That's UFC Fight Night 159 in September. Askarov taking on Brandon Moreno. So that's a really interesting fight here because we thought the flyweights were dead. I don't think so. Not now. I mean, why would they sign Askarov if they're dead, right? This guy's 10-0. He's a stud. He's got some good wins. Anthony Leon, for a Bellator fighter, by Twister, I should say, and then also Jose Maria Tomei used to fight in the UFC. All his wins are a stoppage, and he's a flyweight. So this guy has a lot of finishing ability for a small guy, and he's from Russia, and everyone thinks that this guy's going to be someone that can give whoever the champ is in that division problems. So great signing here by the UFC. He hasn't fought in over a year, which is definitely something to keep in mind, but clearly he was waiting for his call to the UFC. Now he takes on Brandon Moreno. Only 25 years old, Brandon Moreno is. He went 3-2 in the UFC, was released, and now they've re-signed him after he picked up a win over Mikel Perez in his last fight, winning the LFA Flyweight Championship. That was a good win for him over a good fighter. Brandon Moreno is a good fighter as well, and he's been in the UFC for a while, and he's had a lot of success, but I don't think he wins this fight. I think that Askarov is going to win this fight, and I mean, who knows? If he goes out there and stops Brandon Moreno, like, you might see him call for a title shot. Don't know what's going on with Henry Cejudo. We're not sure if he's going to defend that belt ever, but Benavidez obviously deserves a title shot if that Division 6 round, which it looks like it will, which is cool. But if not, I mean, this guy's got to be like one of the top guys. And also, there's a fight at UFC 240 between Pantoja and Figueiredo, which the winner of that fight I think would be in the mix as well. So flyweight's actually interesting again, and I'm glad to see that because I think that division's not bad. It got a little bit of a bad rap for a while for some boring fights, but I think they got rid of some guys that really weren't putting on good fights, guys who were just going to grind, and they've signed guys like Askarov to finish fights. So I think that's a good signing. Anyways, guys, I think that's it for today. Glad you guys tuned in again, of course. So it should be a good Bellator card tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed PFL last night. Also, UFC this weekend. That's on Saturday. Again, I won't be able to cover that because I'm attending a family event. So no play-by-play from me on SureDog. Let me plug my stuff here again. Twitter at MMAOB. This podcast, MMAOddsbreaker.com, and on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, guys. I appreciate that. Again, opening odds previews for UFC and Bellator, as well as a main event preview for Durandamy and Ladd. So it's full written preview. Check that out. SureDog.com, have my prime picks. And again, no play-by-play this weekend because I have a family event to attend tomorrow. What else? MMAnews.com, I have my Bellator preview. Check that out. And MMA Rings, I'm going to send something in today. And then what's the other one? BJPen.com, of course. BJPen, all the news. Check that out. Really enjoy working for those guys. And I'll be doing a shift on Sunday covering the news or whatever I missed on Saturday. So check all those websites out, guys. I appreciate the support as always. Today's Friday, like I said. So have an amazing weekend and enjoy the fights, guys. I'll be back with the recap of UFC and Bellator on Monday. I look forward to talking about that with you guys. But until then, have an awesome weekend. Stay out of trouble. And I'll see you guys Monday morning and talk about the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Have a good day, guys.